Welcome, everyone. This is almost like a biology lesson, but it will be clarifying some of the things that we've been talking about quite a bit. First of all, just we need to study the oxygen transport. Okay, how the oxygen gets transported. We all talk about this, but having a little bit more analysis will be very helpful. Just so that we know, and these are all clarifications. Many of you know some of this anyway, but understand a couple of things. Number one, hemoglobin. Everybody knows hemoglobin. Hem means iron. Iron is absolutely necessary to create oxygen. If iron is not there, oxygen cannot be carried. It's like there are four molecules of oxygen. That is, each hemoglobin, each carries four of them, four molecules of oxygen. So hemoglobin, iron is essential. That's one thing is very essential. So now, the iron is also useful. I'm just going to sidetrack a little bit. The iron is also useful for many other functions, like, for example, immune systems, thyroid, other immune systems that are important, liver function, kidney function. The iron is very important for some of these other functions in the body, besides having the oxygen carrying function. Okay, that's just the iron part of it. Let me go to two other gases that a hemoglobin carries, which is very important to understand. It carries nitric oxide entirely and carries oxygen. Interesting, isn't it? It carries nitric oxide and carries oxygen. So now, what is the importance of this? By the way, nitric oxide is mostly generated in the sinuses, as we know all about that. And I'll talk about nitric oxide in a minute, but these two gases are carried. No, they're carried all the way down to the various small circulation, microcirculation. Even, this hemoglobin carries everywhere. Now, why you have two gases? I'll give you an example. When there is a snow out and your walkway to the house is covered with snow, and the Amazon guy comes to deliver a package. Supposing somebody comes to deliver a package. Now, what does he have to do? He has to take that shovel. I mean, if you have not shoveled it, he has to shovel it to clean it before he can walk up and deliver the package. Make sense? That is the thing that happens. Nitric oxide released as it goes into the area, the hemoglobin senses, that wow, these cells don't have enough oxygen. Hypoxia, less oxygen in that cell. When it senses that, it releases nitric oxide. And nitric oxide opens up the vessels, opens up the whole blood vessels and a little bit extra circulation. It's like clearing the walkway, clears the walkway. Now the oxygen can get in. You see? So, and these two things are really increased. All the things are increased when you have low oxygen in the cells. That's number two things are required. One, low oxygen. And the second thing that's required, which is very fascinating also, is carbon dioxide. If the cells were just not producing because they were like sick, okay, and the oxygen level is not enough, everything, but they were not working. If the cells were not working, they will not produce carbon dioxide. Makes sense? Because when they're working, metabolism working. Those types of cells won't get extra oxygen. But those who are working, actively working there, they'll produce some carbon dioxide. The carbon dioxide lowers the pH, or it becomes slightly acidic. So when you have two things conditions with low oxygen and you have slightly more carbon dioxide, now all of a sudden hemoglobin says, the delivery man says, hey, This is it. I'm going to deliver it. I'm going to stamp it and I'll photograph and say, delivered. Amazon delivery complete, That is exactly what happens. So when we generate more nitric oxide with our practices and everything, then we produce this whole mechanism of opening up various areas and increasing the perfusion not perfusion, increasing the oxygenation or actually respiration. That's what the respiration is called. It's a cellular respiration. That's where it increases the oxygen delivery. So that's one. Another point I want to make sure that we don't get confused is the fact that anything in excess is not good. We know that very much. And that point I want to make sure before we end. Tomorrow I'll enlighten that a little bit more. But nitric oxide is probably like 1,000 millimoles. Don't worry about that. That's the whole production per day. But here's the thing. Can you overproduce nitric oxide? There are some conditions, when you get in shock, injury, something, you got in a car accident, or you have some bad infection. Say you had an infection in viruses or hospital infections or stuff like that. That can overproduce nitric oxide. Just an example, okay? Certain sicknesses can produce overproduction. And that can be very dangerous. However, understand that by doing what we're doing physiologically, with the humming and all the stuff, we will not overproduce to a dangerous level. So understand these two aspects of it. Nitric oxide can be good. Overproduction can be bad, but overproduction happens particularly in sickness and stuff like that. And so we'll expand that a little bit more, in terms of how we handle this. But the key issue is recognizing that there are three gases involved ultimately: nitric oxide, oxygen, and carbon dioxide. And carbon dioxide, therefore, and we talked about the myth of what are the myths about that, and tomorrow we'll continue a little bit extra to see how we follow these chains of how the exact oxidation occurs and what is exactly the role of proper breath. And there are certain misconceptions that we carry, and we'll work on that. Thank you.